As Filipinos head to the polls, they won't just be deciding a president, but an understanding of their country's history. Polls suggest only 2 of the 10 presidential candidates stand a chance of victory, and the choice is stark. Current Vice President and leader of the opposition Leni Robredo, a human rights lawyer and grassroots activist, or Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the namesake son of the country's former dictator, who was removed from power by a people's revolt in 1986.
The election now is, I think, is a result of several decades of preparations. Since they were ousted in 1986, they have really been planning for their comeback.
Marcos Jr., also known by the nickname Bongbong or BBM, has tried to refashion his family's image and distance himself from his father's legacy of brutal martial-era rule. And it appears to be working. Marcos Jr. has led polls throughout the campaign, but he's most popular amongst the youngest Filipinos. In a February poll, 77% of 18 to 24-year-olds said they will vote for him. And that's leading some to say, at this election, the very memory of the country's authoritarian history is at stake.
It's all authoritarian nostalgia because he always presents the time of his father as the good old days to which the Philippines should return. And only he could do that because he is a president who will restore unity in this country and pride in being Filipino.
So how is this symbol of the Philippines' deep-rooted dynastic politics and authoritarian past on the cusp of persuading the country that he's the antidote to the nation's political ills? Analysts say it's a mix of education about the 2-decade Marcos era being scaled back, at the exact time social media use in the country of 110 million exploded.
So it's like a perfect storm. So the the curriculum was overhauled at the same time that social media was becoming more prominent in the country, and the Marcoses took advantage of that for their disinformation and so forth.
The potential of disinformation to impact political outcomes is huge. Filipinos spend more than 4 hours on social media every day. That's 2 hours more than the global average and the highest of any country in the world.
Can you imagine the 4 hours daily that you spend in social media? Can you imagine, since social media is so filled with garbage, and toxic materials, can you imagine the kind of toxicity that you inhale,
Ellen Tordesillas works at Philippine fact-checking site VERA Files. They found that disinformation in the run-up to the vote largely favoured Bongbong Marcos, including claims that human rights violations during his father's brutal premiership were never proven. By contrast, they say negative disinformation mostly targeted Leni Robredo, the only female presidential candidate at this election.
Gendered disinformation really truly is a huge problem. But here's the other part. It's not just women. Anyone who was marginalized before is marginalized even more. This is the incentive structure and the design of social media.
Scholar Jayeel Cornelio says this potent combination means many Filipinos lack a historic arsenal to interrogate their country's history and how current leaders relate to it.
And because of this circumstances, people fall for grand, seductive narratives of unity, of moving forward, of national reconciliation, national healing, things, virtuous messages that you would hear, seemingly virtuous words that you would hear from Bongbong Marcos.
Which could mean, at this election, Filipinos may look to a family symbolic of their authoritarian past to lead their future. Alex Chen and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.